All right, good morning. We will call the Hudsonville Public Schools Board of Education special meeting for February 6th to order. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Ken.
I support that.
Second by Mark. All in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? All right, Robin, recognition of visitors and hearing of people present.
Sure. First is Aaron Dewey.
Greetings, Board. January 19th, the Board comes to a consensus on a 5-year millage. January 30th, after some confusion, the Board roll call votes 4-3 in favor of that 5-year millage. Before that week even ends, the Board changes its mind. For months, 3 of you have campaigned on restoring trust and transparency. For 2 of you, it was a talking point well before that. 1 of you has even repeatedly promised not to make a mockery of the process. But here we are at an emergency meeting, 7 a.m. on a Monday, undoing what was rightfully done in the previous 2 meetings. How is this community supposed to trust you if you can't even make it a week, let alone a month or the full term? How are our children supposed to trust you? Because that's what it's supposed to be about, serving our kids. And it's incredibly clear to everyone who had ears to hear that the 5-year plan is what's best for all of our children. Now, there's been a lot of debate over how to properly interpret the word all in that phrase. And this should have been a clear win for all children. No interpretation necessary. But instead, it's been chosen to hold our children hostage to the political whims of the 13% of voters who are sending a message. And you're sacrificing this board's integrity to do it. I do appreciate wanting to have a unanimous vote. That is a great idea, especially for something as important as this. And I want to say thank you to those that are serving with integrity and choosing to throw themselves on the grenade instead of letting it damage our district. But what we need is for those grenades to not be thrown in the first place. Plus, I'm not really sure what's worse, a board that's split on a technical issue of a 1 versus 5-year millage, or a board with 6-year terms that can't even make it through a month with its integrity intact. I'm not sure. I'm leaning toward the latter because it's much easier to sell a learning curve and inexperience than it is all of this. Thankfully, we don't have to have that debate. You don't have to sacrifice trust and transparency for a unanimous decision. You can and you should put the 5-year back, and the minority of you that rightfully lost the vote can be the ones to concede. That will stop the bleeding, and then you can get to work trying to repair the damage that's already been done. Please, do what's right for our kids, not what's right for the politics of a small sliver of our community. Thank you.
Jenna Brong.
She was unable to make it today.
Okay. Randy Beist.
I really don't want to take your time. I just don't understand why we're having this meeting. I wish it would have been maybe just clear. I know you can put the agenda out there, but is this because you didn't like last week's vote? Is it because you needed to have another meeting to approve something for the mill? We don't know. And I'll just be honest, nobody seems to do that. I'm not saying you, but some of you are elected by these auto impact people, let's just put it out there, and they're making a mess of our county. There's currently a Washington Post reporter who's spending months on a story, a national story. They got rid of people who were competent and replaced them with, we have an HVAC person who's gonna supposedly run our health department. That's exciting, isn't it? I would trust them to run my health department. So we don't know. We wish we could trust you, but right now, in Aaron's passion, we just don't know. I looked the other day, $92 million operating budget. I don't even think that includes the buildings that we're doing. And we want to talk about transparency. And I drove to Detroit and back this weekend, and I'm wondering why we talk about transparency so much, just like those auto impact people do, and then they do everything in the dark at night. And here we are at 7 a.m. when literally most of our people are either sleeping, came home from third shift, are getting their kids to school or on their way to work right now. I mean, we have 1% of our current people who live here who could make this meeting. Like, there was Sunday afternoon, and maybe you don't like Sunday meetings, but let's think in new ways. Like, what was happening at 4 p.m.? There wasn't even a football game yesterday at 4 p.m. I don't think the Red Wings played or the Pistons played. The Tigers certainly weren't playing. Like, can we do things in a way that's really transparent? I think we've tried. I know you've had lots of people here screaming, and we've made national news and all that too, but can we avoid that? Like, that doesn't make our kids happy. It doesn't make our kids feel safe. Just make our kids feel safe and our community feel safe. I ask it of you. I know some of you do that. I know it's in your inner being, but we also know if we look at the last year, not all of you have. In fact, some of you have said we're here for the minority, some screaming people. I mean, Andrew, good grief, you spend your whole summer like loving on kids. Of course, that's beyond reproach. I mean, in the biggest way. That's why you're on this board, but we just are really seeking transparency and honesty and integrity. And maybe it's just something that we all missed, but lots of alarm bells went off this past weekend when all of a sudden there was a surprise meeting. So, thank you.
Jamie Fleming.
Good morning and happy Monday at 7 a.m. I came this morning to comment on two things I hope to hear in today's discussion. Actually, maybe one thing I hope to hear and one thing I hope not to hear. The thing I hope to hear is a clear explanation of why, just 1 week after the board voted on the ballot language for the millage proposals, we're here again for a second vote. There's been a lot of speculation about the reason, and I've chosen to reserve my own judgment until after hearing today's discussion. It may be that the board plans to give such an explanation. The comment came before that, so here I am. But if not, then I ask in the interest of transparency, trust, and the dispensation of rumors, that you provide an outline of the reasons and steps that were taken amongst you to bring this topic back for a second time. The thing I hope not to hear more of this morning is the dialogue that we heard at last week's meeting that implied that a millage vote should or could be used as a litmus test for the approval of the board or as a tool to correct issues that haven't been addressed. That's not productive discussion. Board members have a fiduciary duty to the district that is above all personal and ideological interests. The rhetoric heard from some of the board members at last week's meeting wandered into territory that defied this duty and started down a path that could, even inadvertently, portray withholding funding as a means to course correction. Board members should be advocating for the funding the district needs to operate, support students and teachers, maintain facilities, and to plan for future growth and needs. Full stop.
Jill Bosniak.
Transparency. The community was assured at the January 19th meeting that board members would remain professional and transparent. And nothing sends transparency like a 7 a.m. emergency meeting on a Monday that was announced on a Friday to discuss something that was voted on and passed last Monday. Maybe I'm wrong, but this feels like the opposite of transparency. Mr. Chansky, you had many things to say about remaining a one-year millage that as it has been in the past. However, your comments don't make sense for many reasons to me. You mentioned that the community can hold the school hostage by not renewing the millage unless certain requirements are met. This is absolutely terrifying. Why did you state a confrontational language in the last work session when you're supposed to be an advocate for the school? You just gave people a reason to go against what's best for the schools by encouraging others to make outrageous demands. This is not the best interest of the district. By putting through a 5-year millage, this would eliminate that hostage situation because the funds would be secured for many years. Annual millages also cost money. I mean, we're spending time here to discuss the millage annually. We're having lawyers review the millages, printing the ballots, getting people to go to the polls, and spending our own time to go out and vote each year. Securing the money for 5 years really seems like a no-brainer. This meeting to again discuss the 1 versus 5-year millage is purposely hurting the district and taxpayers. And for what? Is it for your own ego? Is it for someone else's agenda? Because it doesn't seem as if you're looking in the behalf for the benefit of the school district. And it's disappointing to have someone with such a selfish agenda here. And both Dr. Vanderjack and Mr. Briggs stated the pros to move forward with the 5-year millage. A 1-year millage proposal would make the school weaker, putting leadership in a constant position of worrying about the lack of funds that could negatively affect thousands of families. By proposing only a 1-year millage, Hudsonville can't hire top talent since there's so many unknowns about what the future figures funding would be. Would you rather go to a district with secured funding and money for the next 5 years, or one that has to pass it annually? Would you rather go to Jenison that just passed an 11-year millage in May of 2022? I'd go with the secured money. I'm an extremely active parent in the district and cannot stand silent while you're putting my children, as well as approximately 6,800 students and over 1,000 staff, in jeopardy. The funding is so important to the district. I would hope that all of you, in the oath of office that you publicly took on January 19th, will want to ensure Hudsonville has the funding needed to remain a highly acclaimed school and to assure that we are able to secure and retain the best talent. Think of the children and their friends and their classmates. Don't you want what's best for them? If you're worried about the millage not passing, here's a solution. You, as a school board members, can ensure that the community understands the importance of passing the millage. Put our school district first, as you continuously pledge to do. Thank you.
Jennifer Johnson.
Good morning. I'm pretty disappointed to have to be here this morning. Full stop. You guys, you know better than this. It's ridiculous. Barb, Mark, Greg, in your public comments, you complained month after month after month about last-minute Board of Education meetings, even though they technically followed the rules, the appropriate rules, notifying of when they were. And Barb, in an email you responded to this week, you used this exact response as justification for this meeting. So transparency, I know the word keeps getting used, it's not there. It's just not there. You guys are supposed to be here for the kids, you're supposed to be supporting the district. If you're supporting the district, instead of spending, approximately $23,000 for one election for 5 years versus now $112,000 approximately per year, you're the treasurer. Is that smart? I don't think so. If you're the treasurer, look at the money. Is it your job to make sure that these kids have the funding to support these students? I think so. I really do. I would really like to understand how we got here today. So in your open comments, or whenever you choose to, explain how this vote came about, who initiated it, and why it's expected to change. And why is a unanimous vote from 1 year, or from 5 years to 1 year, the one that's approved? If it was approved at 5 years with 4-3 or whatever it was, that's what you need to be doing. 5 years. Do the right thing. It's not hard.
Okay, thank you. Right, next up, we have our action item. I need a motion to support the following resolution. That the board approve the resolution calling a special election on May 2nd, 2023 with the following ballot proposal: a 1-year operating millage renewal and a 5-year sinking fund millage.
What's the explanation?
I'll move that. I'll move that.
Motion by Mark. And we need a second.
Support.
Support from Dawn. Any discussion?
Barb,
Where's transparency? Go.
I've got something to say. I came to this meeting this morning and I wasn't going to speak, but I'm going to because I want people to clearly understand what I said last week. I am in agreement over a long term of having a 5-year millage. However, the most pressing thing in my mind right now is the ability to be able to pass the 5-year sinking fund in May. I pointed out some data that I was looking at about the votes on the operating renewal over the last 10 years. And then I also pointed out the data concerning the sinking fund vote back in 2013 and in 2018. In 2018, the operating renewal was passed by a 73 to 27% margin with 1,215 votes. That same year, the sinking fund, the 5-year sinking fund, which is up now for the first time since 2018, was passed with a 54-46 margin, or 215 votes out of 1,215 votes. That's a 19% difference from those who voted positively for the operating renewal to those who voted positively for the sinking fund. The sinking fund is necessary for this district to be able to run. For 27 years in a row, the district has gone with a 1-year renewal. So it isn't like I stepped to the table and tried to change that. I said, why don't we just stay with the status quo for at least 1 more year and not change things when we have both an operating renewal and a sinking fund present at the same time. And not based on anything that I'm going to change about the future, but looking at the past, which is many times predeterminate about the future. And I said to myself, you know what? Why was there such a vast difference between 73% passing the operating renewal and only 54%, the same 1,200 people passing the sinking fund? And as the treasurer, I'm not willing to take the chance that there could be a 19% difference again this coming year, which could sink the sinking fund. That is why I voted the way that I did. That is why I brought the amendment up. And at this time, in the last week, I've asked numerous people if they could tell me what the circumstances were in 2018 that might have caused that. And no one's been able to tell me that. So I still stand by that I'm concerned about the sinking fund. That's why I voted the way that I did. That's what I proposed, the way that I did. There was nothing untransparent about that. I laid it right out there, and the board voted. And the way that I voted didn't win. I can live with that. We had a vote. That's why I voted, and that's why I brought it up.
So my vote is in a position of unanimity with the superintendent and with the administrative team, because we go through the millages, and it is best to have a unanimous position that further empowers or gives more tools in the tool bag, if I can, for the superintendent and the administrative team. A point was made regarding the board needing to push, be more assertive in terms of pushing millages and sinking funds through, and I think that's accurate, and we've talked about that in public as a board. I appreciate the comments about the millage needing to pass 1 year and so on and so forth. We did have discussion at the January 19th work session. We came out of that discussion with maybe not unanimous, but certainly a strong message from the board relative to the direction to the superintendent and assistant superintendent on bringing a resolution forward for a 5-year millage. That direction was, in fact, so clear that there was a discussion around, well, should we take a vote that night? That would have been inappropriate and against, and that would have been changing an agenda midterm. So we didn't do that. We came back, and that would have been inappropriate. We came back at the January 30 board meeting, and a motion was made with the resolution written up as a 5-year renewal per the direction the board had given to the administrative team to move forward at the January 19th meeting. So that motion was brought to the table for that resolution. Discussion was had about amending that resolution. You can't amend the resolution once it's written. There are other stakeholders that have that have say in terms of the language and so forth. So the way the resolution was written was the way the vote had to be taken. We couldn't amend it that night. So then you saw the 4-3 vote that came out of that resolution after the amendment was essentially voided because we couldn't vote on that. And then through other discussion, we're here this morning with a 1-year millage renewal resolution in front of us. Troubling to me is we had a decision coming out of the January 19th meeting. Between then and January 30th, discussion was had, or somehow there was a shift in some positions to surprise the board and to surprise the superintendent at the January 30th meeting is a lack of transparency. And that's something we should never surprise a superintendent or a board with information like that. That should have been communicated out before the meeting. I'm not saying we wouldn't have still changed and gone to a 1 year. Maybe we would have, perhaps for the reasons that Ms. Kuchanski stated. But to surprise a board and a superintendent and administrative team in that way is, we have to do better than that. For the kids and the parents and the administrative team, we just have to do better. And then once we have the 5-year resolution in front of us, and we had a majority vote, maybe not unanimous, but majority coming out of the 19th meeting, to then have a split vote going forward, again, it's just not good governance, and we have, as a board, have to do better than that for our kids, for our students, for our parents, and our administrative team, and our teachers in this district. So that's where I'm at. At the end of the day, I will support a 1 year because I am most concerned about getting unanimity for our superintendent and administrative team, parents, teachers, and so forth. That's where I'm at. But those are my feelings, my comments on the topic this morning.
Thank you, guys.
I'll add to that. I echo most of your comments. I stand behind how I voted last week. I still think 5 years puts us. There's a lot of reasons to do 5 years. Much like Jennison, there's a stability factor to it. But to Ken's point, it would be catastrophic if we don't pass these to our students and our teachers. So I think collectively as a board, with the unanimity, we want to put something forward to the voters that has the best chance of getting elected. And then I'm encouraged by how many of you all showed up this morning. I think, we have to do a job going forward as a board to lay out the facts and the reasons for why certain votes, why they're positive for the district. So I think we can all do that better. And I think it's on the folks that are actively involved in these meetings who you hear these discussions, because there are a lot of people that don't come to the meetings that they need this information. They need to know the rationale why 5 years is best, or why Jennison can pull off 11 years or 10 years. That's phenomenal. Our most important responsibility is the students, and if we don't pass this, they're the ones that suffer the most. So that's why I'll be supporting the 1 year today. I'll also say too, the reason there's nothing nefarious about why we are doing this morning at 7 a.m. as opposed to Thursday. There's a state law requires this needs to happen before February 7, I believe at 4 p.m. We don't have anything scheduled before 4 p.m. tomorrow. We would miss the deadline. It wouldn't be on the ballot tomorrow. So trust me, I don't think any of us really look forward to getting up at 7 a.m. I'm supposed to be on a plane right now, so I just changed the flight. But it's this important. So I just want you to know we are, all of us are. It's for the students and the teachers. We need to pass this.
And I just want to comment that going forward, we will seriously be looking at a 5-year. We've done the 1 year for 27 years. We did not have a lot of discussion. It came to the board actually at a board meeting where we typically don't have discussion. We typically have discussion at a work session. It is critical that this millage is passed. After the meeting, I will share that Dr. Vanderjack wanted the board to have unanimity. So we have worked hard, and just a comment to Mr. Bice, we were unable to meet on Sunday, And I do want to thank Nick because he should be in the air right now. He changed his flight. So
Thank you.
that's where we're at.
I still wanna know how we got here. You had 5-year approved.
Because Dr. Vanderjack is important to him and the board that we have unanimity.
Now, some of us on this board feel that a 5-year millage sinking fund would have passed, and I still firmly believe that. I still firmly believe that this community, and I understand we had a dip last year, but I firmly believe that a 5-year would have passed, and it's the job of this board and this administrative team to get out there and sell it. And I believe that. And so I vote for unanimity, but I had no question that the 5-year millage renewal and sinking fund would pass. We are one of 2 districts, I believe, in the county, in the ISD, that doesn't have a multi-year millage fund renewal. So.
I support everything that Ken has said, and I'm willing to extend grace to those on the board who maybe didn't fully understand the process. And I think as new board members under new leadership, this unfortunately was not the greatest time for us to have that learning experience. And so I appreciate all of your patience. I agree that having a unanimous vote is important for everyone, for our community, for our staff, for administration, and for our board. That's why we're here this morning.
I appreciate the grace that's being extended to me. However, I want you to know that the reason that I voted the way that I did, and the reason that I brought up the situation was because of the slim passing of the sinking fund in 2018. So regardless of anything else, I still have not had anybody tell me why that was such a slim margin. And I am not willing to take that chance in losing that sinking fund. So I appreciate what everybody has to say here. And I just wish that they would appreciate a difference of opinion on something.
From my perspective, when we were in the meeting on the 19th, I think your words were, let's do this now. And from that point to the next meeting, I had heard nothing about a change in plan. So to me, the meeting that we were at last, when we were voting on it, I had no reason to believe that any of us here disagreed with that, because we hadn't heard otherwise. So from my perspective, I think this will be passed, this is gonna be voted, I think our kids are gonna be supported the way that they need to be. Going forward though for this board, I think we need to do a better job getting on the same page. If we have disagreements, we can have disagreements. Let's not be blindsided about what we're doing here, because it's not productive at all, obviously, so.
One quick note, when we spoke last week, I explained in 2018, that was after the current superintendent had resigned, and you were looking for a new superintendent. And at that point, I was appointed superintendent, but it was not my position yet. Dr. Seglarek was still the superintendent. I'm not saying he wasn't as invested in the process, but I know he was deeply invested in his work up north. And that was the discussion that we had. To me, that is part of the reason why I think it's extremely important that there is consistency in this role. So as some of you know, there could have been some inconsistent transition. To me, staying in the district, staying in this role, as long as you'll have me, is important for our kids. So that was what happened in 2018.
And Andrew, the way that you stated it, I will apologize for not discussing this with the board beforehand. I should have said something to my fellow board members about this. I had the information at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so I apologize for that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't know, to me, it's important that if we do have issues with a resolution or whatever, that we talk to Barb about it, and that Barb did what she did last week, right, after the fact, and talk about, hey, here's what's going on, here's another suggestion, right? I know we have to be careful about the things that we, do outside of a public meeting for obvious reasons, but it would have been nice for me, and I'm not gonna belabor this, would have been nice for me and others on the board that have had that input beforehand, so that, because I had no idea how Mark or Barb was gonna vote on the matter, right? I just heard you talking about the amendment, so there's some things that we can certainly improve upon, and I know we're all here for the right reasons, and we'll continue to do that.
And I guess I will just finalize this by saying that the board has had over a week to mull over the data that I provided, and the board seems to be fine with a 54-46 vote, and that we're gonna still be able to pass it, so I defer to their wisdom, and we'll move on.
Any further discussion? All right, we have a motion on the table with a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Nick Bullhouse,
I vote to approve.
Craig Chansky,
Approve.
Mark Davis,
Yes.
Andrew Dewitt,
Yes.
Ken Hall,
Yes.
Barb Cooper is a yes, Dawn Sneeden.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, we will do a quick roundtable if anyone has anything. Mr. Davis.
I'm all set, thanks.
Thanks.
Discussion may warrant, or this may warrant further discussion at Thursday's meeting. I'm sure there are, as mentioned, a lot of folks that weren't able to make it tonight will have a larger crowd on Thursday meeting, may warrant bringing it up one more time as to why the vote this morning.
Just for those, and don't mean to piggyback,
That's fine.
but for all of you, you've probably seen this, and maybe those that meeting, it will be in the auditorium, but primarily because our fine arts students are doing a quick performance on their upcoming musical. So we thought we'd just stay in that room. So not that we're expecting 400 people,
Understand.
but if you want to come for the performance, I would encourage 400 people to come for the performance. Not the board's performance, the kids' performance.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Yes.
I appreciate everybody coming out this morning. Hopefully we don't have too many more of these, but I do appreciate the public's concern and all that, and we're gonna keep trying to do our best for the district.
I'm all set, thank you.
Great. All right, I'm all set. All right, we are adjourned. Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Support by Dawn. All in favor?
Yes.
All right, adjourned.